Episode number 20. She suddenly interrupted herself, and lay her hand on K. as if she wanted to calm him down, and whispered, "Be quiet, Berthold is watching us." K. slowly looked up. In the doorway to the courtroom stood a young man. He was short, his legs were not quite straight, and he continually moved his finger round in a short, thin, red beard with which he hoped to make himself look dignified. K. looked at him with some curiosity. He was the first student he had ever met of the unfamiliar discipline of jurisprudence, face to face at least, a man who would even most likely attain high office one day. The student, in contrast, seemed to take no notice of K at all. He merely withdrew his finger from his beard long enough to beckon to the woman, and went over to the window. The woman leant over to K and whispered, "Don't be cross with me, please don't. And please don't think ill of me either. I've got to go to him now, to this horrible man. Just look at his bent legs. But I'll come straight back, and then I'll go with you. If you'll take me, I'll go wherever you want. You can do whatever you like with me. I'll be happy. If I can be away from here for as long as possible, it'd be best if I could get away from here for good." She stroked K.'s hand once more, jumped up, and ran over to the window. Before he realized it, K. grasped for her hand, but failed to catch it. He really was attracted to the woman, and even after thinking hard about it could find no good reason why he should not give in to her allure. It briefly crossed his mind that the woman meant to entrap him on behalf of the court, but that was an objection he had no difficulty in fending off. In what way could she entrap him? Was he not still free? So free that he could crash the entire court whenever he wanted, at least where it concerned him. Could he not have that much confidence in himself? And her offer of help sounded sincere, and maybe it wasn't quite worthless. And maybe there was no better revenge against the examining judge and his cronies than to take this woman from him and have her for himself. Maybe then, after much hard work writing dishonest reports about K., the judge would go to the woman's bed late one night, and find it empty. And it would be empty, because she belonged to K, because this woman at the window, this lush, supple, warm but in its somber clothes of rough, heavy material belonged to him, totally to him, and to him alone. Once he had settled his thoughts towards the woman in this way, he began to find the quiet conversation at the window was taking too long. He rapped on the podium with his knuckles, and then even with his fist. The student briefly looked away from the woman to glance at K over his shoulder, but did allow himself to be disturbed. In fact, he even pressed himself close to the woman, and put his arms around her. She dropped her head down low as if listening to him carefully. As she did so he kissed her right on the neck, hardly even interrupting what he was saying. K saw this as confirmation of the tyranny the student held over the woman, and which she had already complained about. He stood up, and walked up and down the room. Glancing sideways at the student, he wondered what would be the quickest possible way to get rid of him, and so it was not unwelcome to him when the student, clearly disturbed by K.'s toing and throwing, which K had now developed into a stamping up and down, said to him, "You don't have to stay here, you know, if you're getting impatient. You could have gone earlier, no one would have missed you. In fact, you should have gone, you should have left as quickly as possible as soon as I got here." This comment could have caused all possible rage to break out between them, but K also bore in mind that this was a prospective court official speaking to a disfavored defendant, and he might well have been taking pride in speaking in this way. K remained standing quite close to him, and said with a smile, "You're quite right, I am impatient, but the easiest way to settle this impatience would be if you left us. On the other hand, if you've come here to study, you are a student, I hear, I'll be quite happy to leave the room to you, and go away with the woman. I'm sure you'll still have a lot of stuff to do before you're made into a judge. It's true that I'm still not all that familiar with your branch of jurisprudence, but I take it involves a lot more than speaking roughly, and I see you have no shame in doing that extremely well." "He shouldn't have been allowed to move about so freely," said the student, as if he wanted to give the woman an explanation for K.'s insults. "That was a mistake. I've told the examining judge so. He should at least have been detained in his home between hearings. Sometimes it's impossible to understand what the judge thinks he's doing. You're wasting your breath, said Kay. Then he reached his hand out towards the woman, and said, "Come with me." "So that's it," said the student. "Oh no, you're not going to get her." And with a strength you would not have expected from him, he glanced tenderly at her, lifted her up on one arm and, his back bent under the weight, ran with her to the door. In this way he showed, unmistakably, that he was to some extent afraid of Kay, but he nonetheless dared to provoke him still further by stroking and squeezing the woman's arm with his free hand. Kay ran the few steps up to him, but when he had reached him, and was about to take hold of him and, if necessary, throttle him, the woman said, "It's no good, it's the examining judge who's sent for me, I daren't go with you, this little bastard." And here she ran her hand over the student's face. "This little bastard won't let me." "And you don't want to set free?" shouted Kay, laying his hand on the student's shoulder, who then snapped at it with his teeth. "No!" shouted the woman, pushing Kay away with both hands. "No, no, don't do that. What do you think you're doing? That'd be the end of me. Let go of him, please, just let go of him. He's only carrying out the judge's orders, he's carrying me to him." "Let him take you then, and I want to see nothing more of you," said Kay, enraged by his disappointment, and giving the student a thump in the back so that he briefly stumbled, and then, glad that he had not fallen, immediately jumped up all the higher with his burden. Kay followed them slowly. He realized that this was the first unambiguous setback he had suffered from these people. It was of course nothing to worry about. He accepted the setback only because he was looking for a fight. If he stayed at home and carried on with his normal life, he would be 1,000 times superior to these people, and could get any of them out of his way just with a kick. And he imagined the most laughable scene possible as an example of this. If this contemptible student, this inflated child, this knock-kneed Redbeard, if he were kneeling at Elsa's bed wringing his hands, and begging for forgiveness. Kay so enjoyed imagining this scene that he decided to take the student along to Elsa with him, if ever he should get the opportunity.